Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name's Kyle Evans and I'm the Director of Sales for Tape Ark. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of the more interesting projects we worked on last year. It was for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tape Ark helped out the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with a critical transformation project where we restored previously unreachable unique preservation level files that were stuck on backup tape, and we migrated those to the cloud. These were a collection of oral histories that simply couldn't be captured again. Tape Ark is a fairly innovative company, and we're addressing a pretty contemporary issue that plagues nearly every industry today. For the last 5 decades, magnetic backup tape has been the go-to option for low-cost, reliable archiving, and there's over 1 billion tapes in just off-site storage facilities around the world today. But with the falling cost of cloud storage and the advent of AI and machine learning, our customers across all of these different industries are really wanting to reconnect with their legacy content to derive further value. And traditional tape infrastructure wasn't really designed for mass migration to the cloud, more for writing a relatively small quantity of data and reading a small quantity of data back and forth to tapes over a longer period of time. So we've taken a really different approach to designing a technology stack that helps our customers to maintain the integrity of the data, have zero data loss, and move on with their transformation projects really quickly. We have a fairly audacious goal, and that is to liberate the world's largest collection of data. So why rock and roll? Well, this is a great case study because I think everyone can relate to rock and roll. People bond over music all of the time, so I thought I'd kick off by sharing my brush with rock and roll fame for you. So in 1999, I was in Perth, Western Australia, a huge Beastie Boys fan, and they toured Australia twice that year. One of those times I was really fortunate enough to meet them, and I actually got to play basketball with them during their downtime. It was such a huge buzz. They say to never meet your heroes, but this was fantastic. They were great guys, really humble, and their whole entourage. A lot of people don't know that they play a lot of instrumental music and they're multi-instrumental themselves. So a huge buzz for me. Pretty much a letdown for them when they saw my skills on the basketball court, but something I'll never forget. And in 2012, the Beastie Boys were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think that really talks to the breadth of genres that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame accommodates and will continue to accommodate into the future to be relevant to everyone. So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a not-for-profit organisation. And in 1993, they decided to build a museum. They had the groundbreaking, in fact, in Cleveland, Ohio. And you knew this was going to be a really big centre when you had people like Billy Joel and you had Pete Townsend from The Who there at the groundbreaking. 2 years later, they held a concert when they opened the museum, and it was a concert that ran all day and all night. They had over 60 acts performing, and it culminated with Bruce Springsteen and Chuck Berry on stage together. And since then, it's grown from strength to strength. It's one of the major tourist attractions in Ohio. And in 2012, they expanded so far that they needed to build an additional building fairly close to the museum, which was their dedicated library and archives. And within the archives sits a range of data, and this includes written transcripts, there's records, there's tapes, and a lot of born digital content. And it's in this archive where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had been operating their media asset management system, which was backing up to an IBM TSM tape library. Like a lot of media organisations, they wrote out triplicate copies of tape, and they kept those 3 copies in separate locations. However, something fundamental happened, and that was that the database for the backup system became corrupt and the hardware broke down. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were faced with a challenge where they had to somehow recover that data and also put something back in place that would work for them. And they were looking at all of the options, and they considered putting in a newer version of a tape library with some consulting services to try and restore those old tapes. And it was extremely expensive. And they also looked to their mission at that point, and their mission is to engage, teach, and inspire through the power of rock and roll. And by putting in another tape library, they simply wouldn't have been able to achieve that engage piece. The data still would have been trapped on 3 copies of tape, and it wouldn't be accessible by their customers who really want to access and enjoy this content. So the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame reached out to AWS, their cloud partner, and in turn, AWS engaged with Tape Ark. We're one of AWS's tape partners. And from there, from the first conversation, it worked really well. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame were very transparent with their challenges, and they told us one thing in particular. That was that we couldn't damage any content. We had to try and rescue it all. So the data integrity was of utmost importance, which is a very common story for our customers. They're really quite concerned about their data. We were confident that they had 3 physical copies of the tape, so if we saw any physical degradation, we thought we could have some redundancy there. And as it turns out, the tapes that they sent to us had been carefully managed, so they were all readable. I mentioned earlier in the discussion that Tape Ark has a very different approach to reading tapes. And the traditional approach is there's really two. When you have an old legacy collection of tapes, you can look at putting in place a number of different individual tape drives, and then you can really max out a computer at 2 or 3 tape drives running simultaneously. However, the problem is if you have a tape collection from the 1990s, you need to have the tape drive that was available in the 1990s. You need to have the cables that were available in the 1990s, and you need to have a computer that can accept that, plus the operating system and software. And when you try to look at that at scale, and particularly for our customers who tend to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of tapes, it's just not feasible to scale using that approach. The second approach is to use a tape library where you have a number of tape drives, and then adjacent to that you have a number of slots, and a robotic arm moves the tapes back and forth between them. But when you have a very large collection, it's simply not feasible to use that approach because there's only 10 tape drives, or a relatively small number of tape drives. So we've taken a completely different approach. Thanks to our partners at SEAGATE Technology, SEAGATE powered by Tape Ark is delivering this service at absolute scale. And what does that look like? Well, based out of our US operations, we deliver almost an infinite cache to write to, so our customers know that when we get this data on tape, we can write as much of it as quickly as we can to local disk cache, which we have an abundance of. We use an IoT-based system, which means we can simply add more drives as the project requires. If we need 1,000 drives, we can add 1,000 drives. It's highly efficient, completely scalable, very reliable. We use error reporting that simply wasn't available on those original tape drives, and it's completely secure. So what does this look like put into practice? Well, for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it looked a little bit like this. So we received the tapes and we audited them. When we receive them, we ask the customers to send through their inventory list, and we mark off the tapes versus the inventory, so we know nothing's gone missing in transit. And in that transit stage, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame used a chain of custody tracked courier system, so that at every step of the way we knew where those tapes were. We restore the data to disk using our Ark Bridge system. That's where we read them en masse, take the data to disk, and then from there we were able to apply a programming solution to decapsulate that information from its original TSM formatting to the raw content. So that was the content and metadata. We made sure that we had the metadata along with the assets, and then we migrated all of that data across to AWS. In all, we processed around 1 petabyte of data for this project, so it wasn't the largest projects that we work on, but it was a really important project. When we moved the data to AWS, we used a device called the Snowball, which is unique to their ecosystem. It's a secured hard drive appliance where it's sent out to our facility. We put in some credentials to unlock that device, and then we transfer all of the content across. It becomes encrypted during transit, and then once it arrives at the data center for the cloud ingest, it simply synchronizes into that customer's account. So it's a really nice, elegant solution. We also ran integrity checks on the data before we migrated and after we migrated to make sure that we hadn't lost any bits of data in that move. And then after that was a really important part, which was the cloud processing. Now that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had this content back and available, what did they do with it? So they started off by putting in a new cloud-based media asset management system, meaning they didn't have to run the hardware on the ground, which was a huge saving for them. The preservation level copies that Tape Ark was able to rescue off these tapes were put into S3, which is simple secure storage. It's the highly available storage tier in Amazon where you run all of your compute functions essentially. So when it was there, the media asset management system processed those preservation level assets and created access copies. And these access copies were lower resolution, but to be used every day. And at the same time, the preservation level copies were dropped down to a new tier of archive storage within the Amazon ecosystem called Glacier Deep Archive. Glacier Deep Archive is designed specifically for what it says. It is an archive tier of storage. And the cost there is around 0.00099 cents per gigabyte per month. That translates to about $1,000 per petabyte per month. So it's a really cost-effective method of storing data in the long term. And then back to the original, to the access copies that were created. They're still up in the S3 tier. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame brought in Grey Meta with their Curio tools, and they took full advantage of having this data in the cloud. They were able to tag all of the celebrities. They were able to extract logos. They were able to run speech-to-text translation, so they had a searchable transcript of every interview. And so they really were fulfilling that part of their mission, which is to engage. Now their customers can go online and search for this content rather than having it stuck on tape. So some of the things that really worked well with this project, right from the beginning, it tied into their mission. by really looking at what they were trying to fulfill as an organisation, it led them down the right path for the technology. The planning was thorough. They looked at all options and had a lot of engagement with their partners. The cloud strategy was important, and understanding the different storage tiers in the cloud, how the transport devices work, the entire ecosystem was quite important for them to make the right decisions. Partner engagement was really thorough. Something as a partner on this project, we really enjoyed the deep level of engagement, because having that honesty and openness helped us to deliver what was a really great outcome for the customer. The speed and execution of the migration itself was quite important, because there were processes that followed on from the Tape Ark part of this project that really relied on having all of the data there. So speed of transcription was quite important. And then to look for innovation. Tape Ark doesn't just operate in the media and entertainment or preservation space. We work with customers who have this similar challenge with tape and valuable data on tape across all industries. And by using that knowledge learned across different industries, we're able to bring innovation to all of our customers. Needless to say, the customer was very pleased. One of the best parts of this job is that we found an additional 109 preservation level videos that weren't expected to be there. And that was just such a great outcome to know that we'd been able to over-deliver on the project. So I encourage you to reach out if you have a tape collection. If you've been thinking about this process, even if you're not operating in the cloud today, it's quite an easy process to go through, and it provides a lot more flexibility than yesterday's hardware. We simply look at tape as being yesterday's backup medium. It was cheap, it was reliable, but when you're looking at preservation level data and you need to access this content in the future to make better value of it for your organization and your customers, then it's simply no other way to go. So thanks so much for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you.